My name is MANOJ AGRAWAL. I'm the group editor for Banking Frontiers.
My name is Manish Pal. I'm heading the cyber governance, risk and compliance for HDFC Bank.
My name is SIDHU. I've been with Wells Fargo for about 6 years plus.
My name is AGNELO. I am the CISO for Kotak Mahindra Bank.
Nagaraj, please, a brief introduction.
And I had been with life insurance company for 15 years after that, and now with the general insurance for last 3+ years. So,
my question number one. This crisis has, shaken everyone. And when things get shaken, one of the things that gets shaken is also trust. Fortunately for us, the crisis is not so bad that trust is shaken. I mean, the financial sector has not collapsed like it is in, let's say, Lebanon, for example, today. But what kind of observations are you seeing about trust and security from all kinds of people?
See, it's a very, very pertinent point of discussion these days, Manoj, from the standpoint that whether security and trust are very, very interrelated, but the fundamental difference, at least from my professional vantage point of view, is that information security as a function is in the business of sustaining and enhancing the trust already established by the business units with the customers, right? But in the current context, when the COVID-19 happened, the context of our work has completely changed, right? Earlier, depending on which type of organization you are, you may have some people working from home and majority of the people working from offices. That construct is completely shattered. So when the context of your business execution changed, your risk lens also would automatically change to see what are the new risks that are coming into play and how they may impact the end customer trust, right? Whether individual lines of businesses, information security, audit, risk management, regulators, customers, third parties, every stakeholder is involved in this. Depending on the context of the IT operating model of any financial institution, they obviously have different challenges. The companies which have got limited number of vendors, who are really, really strong from a security awareness and understanding standpoint, at least the supply side, the trust still has some ability to continue compared to some of the other organizations. If you're a global organization with tens of millions of customers and a broad spectrum, depending on your customer demography, if somebody is heavily digital, that is a different challenge. Somebody who is elderly and not digital savvy, that's a different challenge. So they are more, losing trust because of losing money through phishing for a certain demography is very, very higher. So everything is contextual, and every organization has got different set of challenges looking at the trust aspect during the course of COVID-19.
I mean, as SIDHU well said on this, the sustenance of this, trust is most important than, next level of building the trust, right? So the sustenance of trust is, always been, struggle for every industry, every organization. So I would say there is only a thin line between the technology and the business, because the business today is completely enabled with the technology. And, when a customer has to access a website, so we need to ensure that he doesn't land into a mimicking or a phishing website. And similarly for the mobile applications, right? So this is actually a more dangerous that there are a lot of fake mobile applications which are hosted on the internet space, and the links are even pushed to the customers for them to download and use it. So for the fraudulent activities. For the organizations to keep the trust always on the high, right? So we as an organization always need to keep closely watching what is happening on the cyberspace, and if any such phishing or a mimicking or a fake mobile applications which gets launched, fraudulent applications get launched, that has to be actioned immediately, right? So I would say that maintaining the trust first comes, and then the building trust is something which obviously is a next level. So
Perfect, Nagaraj. In fact, to extend your this thing, rather than fake currency, which used to be the big fear factor, it's now fake organizations and fake apps and fake websites and fake anything digital, and that is a real challenge. Let's hear from AGNELO or Manish on any new perspectives on trust.
Yeah, I think in any kind of a crisis situation like this one, it gives a great opportunity for the bad guys to use that opportunity to do various kind of things. And during these times, COVID times, I think the one thing that we have seen very commonly across all geographies is the kind of phishing attacks, COVID themed phishing attacks that are happening, and in during this time, I think in the last 3 to 6 months, I think there has been an exponential rise in the number of phishing kind of attacks and those kind of things. And one of the biggest challenges is that because with this digital push, and especially in this COVID time where more and more customers have started using the digital platform, and they could be first time customers, first time users, and may not be very tech savvy, and hence it becomes they are vulnerable to this kind of frauds, and hence it becomes a very big challenge, and it is a challenge for a lot of organizations, for the banks, and for everyone else to ensure that how do we safeguard this customer, what kind of checks and balances can we build at our end, having understood that there will always be customers who will get phished and who will give away their information. So how do you still protect this customer? I think that is a big challenge that everyone is facing, and towards that I think everyone is working to see how we can beef up our own processes and controls to see how do we manage this situation better.
The ecosystem is very non-deterministic in the digital world compared to a very deterministic ecosystem. A bank branch is a bank branch.
So Manoj, I would like to approach this a little differently. While what SIDHU and AGNELO brought out correctly is that one of the key challenges is the kinds of customers that we have. What has the impact been of this development on them, right? And as Mr. Nagarajan brought out very correctly, that before having trust, you have to build trust. That's a very key point I think he has mentioned. And if we take a step back and just examine this word trust, for example, right? As far as financial organizations are concerned, or the BFSI at large is concerned, I think the whole industry runs on trust. Now, what is that trust? It's the trust between the customer and the organization, right? And at the end of the day, it falls back to the basics of demand and supply. So today, what does the financial organization do? It basically identifies a financial need that the customer has, correct? Puts in place a solution and delivers that solution via a service, correct? That's what we all are doing at a very, very simple terms, if I were to put it across. Now, what determines the foundation of the trust that the customer will develop in you or in your service? I think there are 2-3 elements there. One is the proficiency with which you are delivering that service, and also the reliability, the efficiency, and the quality of your service, correct? So if you look at all these elements, they have been at play even before this pandemic situation came in. What has changed slightly is the secure delivery of this service and the comfort that the various segments of customers have in consuming that service in that particular manner. So what at least I have seen is that the services are the same. The concepts which probably AGNELO, Mr. Nagarajan or Mr. SIDHU has been putting in to secure that service has always been there. But suddenly, because these are uncertain times, automatically the focus on secure delivery of these services, securing the entire transaction, securing the experience is come into limelight.
Right, correct, that's true. That is the delta that has happened in the times today. So that's great. I want to now go on to my second thought, which is a continuation of what AGNELO mentioned about the increasing number of all kinds of frauds and cyber attacks. Actually, if you see, these kind of attacks have been hitting the newspaper headlines for years together now. It's been 3-4 years at least that every day we are seeing some kind of headline of someone losing a few thousand or lakhs of rupees, or millions of records being stolen from a particular organization.
Now, I don't think people have become immune while we keep hearing about the cyber frauds and those kind of things in the industry. But I think a major cyber fraud can really impact the organization, impact the trust of the organization in a very big way. So we have a lot of such examples in the past where the existence of the organization itself becomes a question mark, after a major cyber breach and the kind of losses they have to go through, the customer trust and all. So the stakes are definitely very, very high over here, and everyone understands that, and organizations are very concerned about it. And definitely cybersecurity is the one of the main agendas in all the board meetings, the management reviews, and people have now realized that this is something that is very critical and very important. So people are concerned about it, and and there are a lot, and it's good, like people are getting educated. Like for example, there's a lot of importance now people are putting on cybersecurity from a management point of view, from a board, and there's a lot of oversight which is there. That also puts a lot of challenge, for that's also a challenge for us. So we have to be on our toes always and ensure that we give the right feedback to the management, and give them the comfort as to what we are doing and how we are securing the organization.
Right? I think I will go one step further and say it's a question of when do you realize that you have been hacked. Okay. So there's a subtle difference. And I think AGNELO and the rest of my colleagues will agree that while, as he correctly pointed out, that there is 100% of the times that the information security practitioner has to be right, still there is a particular set of threats which we all like to call advanced persistent threats. I mean, it earlier used to be the buzzword and the jargon, but now it's a reality. And what general research, security research says is that there might be very, very few organizations who are not yet breached. It's just that you don't know that you've been breached. So somebody might already be sitting inside your organization and already being observing you, waiting for the right moment. Now, if I were to expand a little more on what AGNELO said in terms of keeping your customers aware, keeping the board members aware, in the reason why we are facing this question of trust is because earlier, and I go back to what I said in terms of delivery of service, the service used to primarily be delivered through various means and mechanisms. And most of the customers were comfortable with the physical touch and feel, the brick and mortar service mechanism. That has suddenly been taken away, or at least it has reduced greatly. As a result, you are now required to rely more on technology. Now, it's not that everybody needs to be tech savvy to use technology. You just need to know how to consume it. But then it's human nature, like you said, the psychological factor. Anything uncertain for a human being, you always are cautious. You always would like to find another way to go and do the same thing with which you are more comfortable. Yes. Right? So here, the digital push, whether you like it or not, push of consuming the services through digital means is now a reality. Mm-hmm. Which is why the trust factor has suddenly come into the limelight, because most of the customers, many of the customers, would be cautious in consuming those services. And that definitely then gets escalated at a board level, that what is it that you're doing in these COVID times? Because amongst the board members also, there are people who are wary of technology, who always like to approach technology with a pinch of salt. Because at the end of the day, while the technology is enabling the business, it has to be done securely. And as you correctly pointed out, there have been enough and more news items which keep coming off and on. So-and-so got hacked, so-and-so got breached, so-and-so got defrauded. Now suddenly the probability of that happening will be more, because like they say, water takes the easiest path to flow. The fraudsters, the people who want to hack you, they will not go and try to break down all the sophisticated security you've put in place. They're just looking for that one weakness. And if your customer is the weak link, then they will exploit the customer. If the ignorance of the customer to consume a technology is the weak link, they will probably exploit that particular weakness. So for the board, if you have to tell them and give them that assurance, what has changed is that you had something known as a crisis management plan. you had a pandemic response plan, which was on paper. The moment the situation has come in, you have actually in the middle of action of putting that into process. So the way, at least I can tell you that the board members are being kept abreast is of a very frequent periodic update, which goes as part of the crisis management team. So the crisis management team, which runs in the organization, is currently having a handle on everything that is happening in the organization, whether it is business, whether it is technology, whether it is process, it is employees, it is customers. And there is a brief which has to go to the board frequently so that they are aware what are you doing in this situation.
Okay. So frequent updates and frequent information and communication is one way.
Yes.
Let me come to Sidhu and take Manish's point forward that a typical organization, it's not about whether you're going to be attacked, but whether, do you know you are under attack? You're already under attack. Is this kind of thinking pervaded to the board level or to different CEOs and CXOs? And if so, Sidhu, are they asking questions related to these kind of things, or are they seeking assurances from the CISO or from the risk head about these kind of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can only echo what Agnello and Manish has said so far, right? Every research report that comes out by any consulting company or a product company is already copied to the board of their customers, right? So everybody knows. If you look at the last 10 years breach data analysis, it clearly states that on an average, it takes 4 months to 7 months, depending on the industry the company operates in. It takes 4 to 7 months on an average, right? So that means that somebody may be sitting inside the perimeter of the organization, but not doing anything, just observing what things are happening. Because the tools are available when data exfiltration starts happening. There are tools available automatically, easily to detect some anomalies there. But, as Manish rightly mentioned, right, there are some weak channels somewhere that can help a perpetrator to be observant and do nothing, just get a feel of the lay of the land. So that is a big factor. But while we are looking at that information, if you look at the second information around the breaches that happened in the last 10 years, 99.6% of those breaches on an average of all the 10 years happened because of a simple known vulnerabilities not patched for over 90 days, right? And that information gets to every technology company, every CIO, every CISO, but there are underlying challenges or maybe lack of consistent processes and effective monitoring that is leading to it. But these are, as I said, 99.6% is based on not patching what is a common vulnerability. So if we tie those two things, it's not a glaring situation to see, oh my God, do I know somebody is sitting inside my infrastructure for the last 4 months, 5 months? Instead of worrying on that front, if we worry on what is known to us and act on them timely and keep monitoring, I think both, whether it is board or the CEO or the CISO or CIO, can have a little bit of sleep rather than worrying on, do I know somebody sitting inside my network? So let me stop there. So one more point though. So if you look at actually the breaches happening, right, there are two types. One, as a customer or as an end user, I would worry about the thing where I have a cyber fraud, right? Because there are certain things that cannot be controlled by anybody. If I'm losing money because of something happening somewhere, my hard-earned money is sitting in a bank and my account is actually mismanaged by somebody, that's a pain for me. But if I'm traveling and then I am in a Marriott hotel or other places and that got breached, my personal information is stolen, right? That people started not worrying much these days because globally 7 billion plus population, if you look at every year, there will be more than 3 times the population, the number of records that get breached. So there is no way thinking that our information is not breached somewhere. We can only manage with good hygiene, but people will worry, as I said, if we start losing money, which is kept in a financial institution for lack of security. So that's where people would continue to be worried. as opposed to breach of personal data, doesn't have
So
a financial
that's a given.
implication much. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
breach
I would
of
just
data
like
is a
to.
given.
Yes, I would just like to add to what Sidhu already mentioned about the 99% of the breaches happen because of a simple vulnerability, because of which a patch was not applied and those kind of things. Now, the one of the challenges that we have is our products are from third parties, right? We have off the shelf products and those kind of things. Now, a lot of these companies still don't have this security mindset, so they don't follow the design by security by design principle. So while they are very good, and a lot of these fintechs, right, they are very good in delivering, coming up with services and products which are very innovative, from a customer point of view, from a business point of view. But security is not always on top of their mind, and that is what creates a big challenge, because the time taken to rectify an issue that is found, it takes a lot of time. Like for example, today, if we find some vulnerability in some product and we go back to the product manufacturer, he will say, oh, this will come up in the next upgrade, and when is the next upgrade? It is after 1 year. So those are the kind of challenges that we have to deal with, and that's what makes it even more difficult.
So Agnello, I want to come to this in a little more detail because I see two kinds of products that every organization uses. One is in-house developed products and one is products sourced from independent vendors in the outside world. But before we get to that, I have another question in my mind for Nagaraj, and that's an extension of what Sidhu was saying, that management finds it relatively easy to understand the threats because they are non-technical in nature. Because the attackers are not using sophisticated tools, they are looking for the easiest weaknesses to breach, the low-hanging fruit. So obviously management can understand that. But the response to that, to achieve 100% success, 100% protection, because 99% is a failure, how you have to actually probably go into technical terms to explain to management what all you're doing to go from 99% security to 100% security. Is that a fact, or are there easier ways to explain to management how you're going from 99 to 100? How does that conversation happen before we get into the technical part that Agnello raised?
So I would be adding to Agnello, no, Sidhu and Manish here. So everyone well explained about so what actually he said was, no, whether you are already hacked or you are yet to be hacked. So there can be only two places where you can stand. You can't stand in between. One. Second is on the product side. So we totally depend on the products, and the product weakness is something which we keep identifying through our routine weakness testing, or it could be declared by the OEM saying that no, they themselves releasing the patches for that, and we going and fixing it, right? And as Sidhu was mentioning, most of the attacks happens either by the misconfiguration or the time gap of the patch has been released and the patch has been fixed. So the attacks which has happened so far, the massive attacks of ransom, be it ransomware, the patch was released on March and the attack happened on May. Many people missed to fix it, right?
Correct.
So that is one. So going back to this, these all are not only the area, I would say that these all are the known areas. The one more area where I have seen is when the attack happens in a bigger social media websites or the internet emails, what we use today, right? So these all are regularly getting attacked, and some point of time it has been compromised as well. And when it got compromised, the entire credentials of the stored on that email or the social media is already out in the darknet. So when this is what I've been using as a case study, and I've done a detailed analysis of 10 to 12 years of darknet data to see that how much information I could gather. And for an individual user, there had been 16 different passwords in last 10 to 11 he has used. In 4 different attacks it got leaked. So this is one of the finding which I was able to find during the analysis in the darknet, right? So what it means is that it is not only the weakness in the system, it is also the credentials which are already available in the market, which means that there are known passwords. So whatever you try to keep a permutation combination of a complex password, it is a human mind that maximum what you will be able to do is something who has already set and which is already compromised, which is there in the database of the hackers, right? So this is so when we communicate back to the management. So coming back to your question, so when we are communicating back to the management, it is not only the technology weakness, the vulnerability which is identified and fixed and all these things. It is also the other weakest area is the individuals, users, and their credentials. And when we go with the data to explain the management, so the data speaks over there, and it becomes very convenient to communicate what you want to communicate to the management, and along with the solution, not only the problem statement.
Okay. So the management is definitely more interested in the solution.
Along with the data. So data is most important of what you have analyzed and what problem you have identified and what could be the solution over there, and how long it is going to take and how much effective it is going to be, right?
Okay.
So that will give the assurance to the board that may not be 100% of security we will be able to give, but we will be taking from a position to a better position.
Okay, which is what is important, correct. Manish, if I may ask you, in going from 99 to 100 and fixing all kinds of patches and weaknesses, what about in-house developed applications? Because is it relatively easy to patch those, something that you've developed in-house? Do you have, how does the whole thing work?
So if I were to take a stab at this, but before I go there, I wanted to add one point to what Mr. Nagaraj had said with respect to your question on how do you address this with the board. Now, one thing which works is that the board also needs cybersecurity training. And that is something which you have to plan as a CISO, as an information security practitioner, if not more, at least once a year. And that you can do yourself, or you can get in somebody from any of the third parties who specialize in giving corporate training. But there is a new breed, including the existing government organizations, who offer this now as a service. So that is something which definitely should be part of the agenda now, that the board members need to undergo a capsule training, maybe of a day or 2 days. And the basic elements of security, of cybersecurity need to be covered. They need to be aware of the terminologies. Technicalities they don't have to get into. They have questions, they will understand. If everybody has a specific laid down secure software development lifecycle procedure, process, policy already in place. So if I were to take on the question, since you are focusing on in-house, if you do have an in-house software development team, they would have been developing softwares for the organization since inception. Let's assume your organization is say 10 to 15 years old, correct? The technology used to develop a particular application at a point in time was adhering to the security standards which were applicable at that point in time. Correct. As you evolve over a period of time, either that application undergoes enhancements, changes, you kind of refurbish it, and every enhancement and every change has to adhere to the security controls which are prevalent at that point in time in the organization. Because mind you, information security team is also updating the security checklists. They are also bringing in the new methodologies of carrying out security testing. So at some point in time, you will come across roadblocks where technology limitation prevents certain security controls from being implemented. So it's never 100% compliance for older legacy applications. And that is where you have to have a technology obsolescence plan in place so that before it really becomes a problem for you, it gets replaced. Across all the tiers of technology, you have to replace it. It has to be replaced with something new. And while it exists in your organization, and I'll go back to what Agnello was saying on this, that you have to have a very tight control on how do you monitor the security around the application. if you know that if it is slightly vulnerable because there is an exception which has been given for for some vulnerability which may be low, but if you are securing it with compensating controls, are you really monitoring it as much? So there is no silver bullet to this, and it's not a one size fits all. You have to be very clear what class of applications exist internally which you've developed on your own, what is their lifespan, and how are you planning to replace them, and while they are in your organization, how do you secure them?
Got it. Understood. Anyone else wants to add to what Manish has said on this point about in-house applications? Any new perspectives on the same point?
No, I can only add to say that Manish has crisply covered the in-house development, especially monitoring the gaps in the security posture of those applications as they build. The other thing also is as the teams start building the applications, irrespective of what the programming language they develop around, right? There is a continuous need, whether the application is undergoing change or not. There is a continuous need to evaluate the functions in the programming language in which those applications were written, and their vulnerabilities need to be on a real time, or if not real time, at least on a monthly basis, need to look at it and say, okay, I have this function in this particular point of sale application for me covering this business segment. However, I got the intel that this function is no longer secure, right? I should be able to relate and then give a heads up to the application owner in advance before they plan to even make a change and say, hey, look, this internal application is developed this way. These are the 4 or 5 functions which are no longer secure. Vulnerabilities have already been found by the threat intelligence researchers. You might quickly want to revisit this and then probably make changes to the application. It's more proactively going to both the CIOs and the business to arrest a possibility of any breach happening. So that is another step CISOs can take.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add to what SIDHU said, right? So now currently we are in this digital world, agile world, where changes are happening to applications almost every day, right? And we as security practitioners have to assess the security, and we need to ensure that the time to market, etc., is adhered to. And hence, that is where even for us security practitioners, we have to be very agile to meet up with the requirements of the business and to ensure. And sometimes they like the challenge, in terms of being able to really assess the risk, correctly and fully, and those kind of things. And those are some of the things we need to manage through a lot of various mechanisms, like you have something called DevOps or DevOps and security together built into it, and doing some of those automating some of those things where you can identify issues faster and also deliver faster.
That's right. Nagaraj, do you want to comment on this in-house tools, techniques, new tools being used, old tools, 10-year-old tools continuing to be used? Do the tools also need to migrate? Like I think Manish said that you need to migrate the applications when they become kind of technologically obsolete. Should an organization look at even getting rid of older programming tools and programming ecosystems?
That's very right, actually. So what actually helps all of us here is, all the way the platform which we, had developed these, in-house applications also gets obsolete. So those who are developed, maybe on the operating system of, 2000, and then, Microsoft Windows 2003, then 2008, right? So over a period of time, this platform also gets obsolete, and obviously, either for the platform or for the application or for the the tools, somehow a trigger happens over there to look into enhancement or migration to the next version. So maybe that one is we as a security professional and the IT team together, we keep closely monitoring the asset inventory, the version control, and then keep moving it. And obviously the next push is that the product also gets obsolete, and the reminders keeps us warning us with a date before that we are supposed to forcefully move out of this legacy environment.
That's great. Any insights, valuable insights or perspectives that any of you want to share that you've actually received from the board or from senior management or from some very top-notch customers? Top-notch meaning customers that have a huge volume of business with you, large clients. Do they give some perspective from time to time that adds to what you already know and think? Who wants to take up any other additional perspectives from?
Yeah, probably I can add to this. So today, definitely with like what Manish said, we need to educate the board, and also they are also getting educated through whatever trainings that we are doing, and there's enough information in the media, and which feeds into all of this. So definitely the board is becoming more concerned. They are asking more questions, okay, and they basically want more details into what exactly we are doing, in terms of security, how are we protecting the organization, and I think one thing that helps over here is that if you are able to show metrics, basically, rather than just saying we have this technology and that technology, but nobody, and instead of getting into the technical jargon of things, if you are able to explain to them in a simple language and show them metrics wherever possible, how are you monitoring, how are you improving, if you are able to show them that, then that gives them the level of confidence and build the trust with them. So so one is like you have metrics which are there, then the other thing is like you have cyber drills. So basically, how are you performing on the cyber drills, which are conducted by, so you can have various third parties who can come and do that for you and all those things. And then how you are performing on those drills, So, and if you can show them, how has the performance been improving over the last, couple of months, couple of years, and those kind of things. So that definitely helps to build the trust. And then the discussion also becoming more engaging, and so we begin to understand each other, and then we get appreciated for that.
Okay.
So I think that those are the things that we should keep in mind.
Thanks, AGNELO. But actually looking for also, what do you do more with your ears? While the board expects you to obviously give a lot of information, a lot of summaries and a lot of metrics and whatever else, but how do you use your ears more effectively? And if there is an answer to that for many more.
Yeah. So maybe I could add to that, Manoj,
Yes,
if we just take probably just 18 years back, when the entire Enron thing came down, and a lot of other financial reporting, due diligence, and all that happened across the world, every country regulators enforced that at the board there should be one person, independent board member, who should be financially literate and savvy to look into the financial numbers that are getting published, right? Okay. Maybe in the last 2 years, I see that boards are also taking independent board members with experience in technology and security too, because they also want to be mindful that while they would like to see the CISO come and provide metrics-driven, adherence to a security program, they also would like to have somebody on the board who will at the same time support CISO and help other board members understand that better, and at the same time also keep some CISOs in check as well, right? It works both ways. Like a manager's responsibility is to provide feedback, at the same time evaluate performance. Similarly, having that kind of a cybersecurity specialist on the board helps an organization to be more aligned with the strategy of the organization and aligned with security, and checks and balances are really, really good. And there are a good number of global organizations who have already implemented that, and that comes handy both ways.
Right. Got it. That's interesting. Let's move on to my next question. So all new kinds of CXOs have evolved in the last 5 years. Chief Digital Officer, Chief Innovation Officer, apart from the traditional CFO, CMO, CIO, and all that. With all that emphasis on trust, do you think there is going to be a new option for a Chief Trust Officer? Okay. And is that going to be an explicit separate post, do you think? Or would a CISO evolve into that? Or would someone from a different background or perspective come into that? So first of all, is there a need for a Chief Trust Officer down the road? Who would like to say? Manish, maybe?
Let's put it this way. Like you said, that there have been some traditional CXOs, so to speak, which have stayed, which will stay, and will continue to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how times change, new concepts will come up. We've heard of chief digital officer. We are hearing of chief privacy officer. Correct.
Yes.
So the chief trust officer is probably something that has evolved as a response to the ongoing times. And yes, definitely, there may be room for a chief trust officer. But if you look back, and I'm happy to be corrected on this, we look at chief privacy officer, we look at chief digital officer, we look at some point in time even a chief technology officer. At some point in time, the CISO was actually, it was supposed to be a natural extension of the CISO's duties.
Yes.
Okay, technology aside, technology probably is more in the realm of the IT and OT guys. But when it comes to privacy, when it comes to digital, okay, people said, is it going to be a tug of war between the chief marketing officer to be the chief digital officer, or will it be the CISO who will become the chief digital officer? So it depends it depends totally on how it is getting better word. So yes, chief trust officer, yes, if the times demand and if there is legislation and regulation which goes behind it, why not?
Okay. Any other perspective, my dear panelists?
I mean, if we were to look at trust as a concept, it is a combination of many factors, not just technology. Technology and security enable the business. So even if the regulations come, potentially it would be maybe a digital trust officer than a chief trust officer, because the trust is mostly business driven, supported and enabled by technology, right? So even if there is a need for the so-called chief trust officer going forward 5 years down the line, that potentially might come from the risk functions leading to the business organizations, but definitely chief digital trust officer could be a rename for chief information security officer. Who knows? That's possible.
Correct. Also, there's a limitation. There's only 25 letters in the alphabet to use in place of that.
That's true. That's true. It can happen in such a way that you can let the day-to-day operations to the chief information security officer, and the governance and regulatory matters related to information security around digital platforms can be given a new role that could be considered chief digital trust officer possible.
Yeah, that's a good separation. Yeah. Any other perspectives, AGNELO or Nagraj?
In which way that trust is something which can be measured by the metrics, what we every vertical is going to present. So be it technology, be it security again a vast domain of incident management, incident response, and the data leakage. So everything going back and presenting with some metrics and showing some assurance that the security is in a good posture, right? So that again is going to be translated back to the trust.
That's right. So making it more tangible, more measurable. Correct. That's true. Let's go on to my final question, because we are actually at the end of the discussion. Maybe you can give me a 1 minute response for each of these. And the question is this: information security as a function relies a lot on external partners than any other function. You can develop a financial package in-house, you can develop a payments package in-house, but you can't develop security solutions in-house. 90% of them you have to buy from the outside world. So from that outside world, all your partners and potential partners, do you seeing a move towards trust, or is it still security focused for most of them? Are they give you, like Nagraj said, more tangible, more measurable outcomes rather than just say, I've built a wall and I'll maintain the wall?
Look, I came from consulting background. I would say this. When a CISO or a CIO talking to a product vendors, it's important that they speak to the engineers behind the product as opposed to fully depending on the salespeople. That's where either the CIO or the CISO will get insights more about the product roadmaps enhancement cycles, getting a detailed technical discussions, and also making sure that either the board members or the CEO of the organization in which CISO works to have a conversation with the CEO or the board member of that security product company, right?
Okay.
To make sure that the need for a technology security solution by the consumer and the service provider, which is a product company, are aligned, and there is a long-term relationship, as opposed to a point-in-time solution acquisition. And when you get a new solution, you drop the old one and bingo. So that will have its own chain of problems. But it is important that a coordinated, finite set of security product vendors aligned at the top of the house beyond CISO on the organization would help at least address some of the risk matters as well as budget matters too.
That's fantastic, Sidhu. In fact,
So I would want to add to Sidhu here.
I would say you've coined a new term, B2B, meaning board to board.
Discussion usually pulls me to tell this in most of the meetings is the most responsible act for the CISO and the IT team in an organization is not getting the new solution in place. It doesn't stop over there, right? So adoption is most important. So
yes.
When we buy a product, when we buy a solution with 30 features, after long evaluation of the multiple solutions of products, and when we go and implement, there is a difference between implementation and installation. So when it gets installed for 10 features, it is not implemented; it is just installed. The 20 more features are not enabled for some reason. So it could be the compatibility issue, it could be other impact or whatever it is. But the adoption is something which has to be closely monitored for any new solution to completely implemented with all the features what we have looked for. So when this adoption is monitored, obviously this is one of the parameter I would see for the trust building. So when we are not completely doing our work of it is as good as buying a 65,000 rupees mobile and use only for a calling purpose, and you don't use any of the options on the phone. It goes.
So aptly put, Nagraj.
Very, very perfect.
Yeah.
Manish, what is your take on this last point?
So if I were to add to what Sidhu and Nagraj said, I think you can actually break it into 2 or 3 parts. Every security practitioner definitely in some shape and form has something we all identify with known as an enterprise security architecture. Now that architecture runs in themes. You have layers and layers, defense in depth is a basic premise of any security practitioner who will swear by it. So every layer has a theme, and every theme will have some products. So when you're clear in your mind what your security architecture will look like, and you know what products you want to put into it, then you go look out in the market who's giving you those products. And when you're doing this, exactly what Sidhu said, that you have to look beyond the sales pitch. And as Mr. Nagraj said, you have to go beyond the features which are getting offered. And that is an exercise which nobody can do for you. You have to realize and do the mapping of the features and what will fit into your security architecture. And then when you go out and want to engage, then you have to engage at not only the senior most level, you maybe have to do some market intelligence around it. Because, today, unlike earlier, the inorganic growth which various organizations want to do, you find a private equity firm buying out a security firm. And they're doing it only because they know it's a money spinner.
Yes.
Right? Where is the vision for security's roadmap? Where is the vision for adding more features? Some larger organizations may swallow smaller organizations, kill their product, adopt certain features, offer a new product. So you have to be very careful when you are trying to figure out which company to go with, because you don't know tomorrow if it gets acquired by somebody who doesn't have security as a focus. Then what?
AGNELO, your viewpoint.
Yeah, so I fully endorse what Manish said, right? It is up to, because the vendor can promise you everything, he'll promise you the moon. Like, for example, today, every vendor in the market says that I do ML, I do machine learning, any new product that you say, they will always claim to do that. One is so what is important is that we really understand first of all what we are looking out for, because what happens is that there are many point products that are available, and you can end up getting in too many point products for various things, and then you finally don't know how to use it, and it gets lost in the whole scheme of things. So one is like Manish rightly said, if you have an enterprise architecture, that is the security architecture, and you're able to clearly map what are the various risks that are there, and then what are the products that will give you the solutions for those. And also understanding what is very important to understand is what the product cannot do, like you rightly mentioned, because understanding that is very important, so you know what are the risks that you are taking, because otherwise what happens that it becomes like a black box, and you believe that the product is delivering what it's meant to deliver, and probably when something hits you would realize otherwise. And I think continuous evaluation and some of these exercises that you do, like doing this red teams kind of exercises based on certain frameworks that are laid down, it gives you a very good view of how easy, and you'll be surprised when you do these red teams. It's so easy to bypass some of the very good technologies that you have. Either because they have not been implemented correctly, or because there were some technical constraints because of which see the battle that we always have to fight is the user convenience versus security, right? And in that battle what happens is that sometimes you have to give way to some things, and that becomes a problem. So understanding that very clearly, and then putting up your thing in place is, I think, very, very important. No, so ultimately it boils down to the culture of the organization, and it has to be top driven basically. Otherwise, any CISO will fail if it's not top driven. And I think the CISO's role is to educate the management, the board, and everybody has to understand that security is everybody's responsibility. It's a business risk. It is not an IT risk. It is not something to do with IT or the IT security guys. It is a business risk, and hence all business leaders have to be understand that very clearly, and that's how I think we should take it.
So gentlemen, on behalf of Banking Frontiers, thank you all very, very much for this enlightening discussion.